Hello? Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Fast, Mayday, what's your location? Get the hell out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, baby. Water in that 2.5 inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5 inch line. To the rope, to the rope, to the rope. 35 in the rear, 35 in the rear.
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast. This is episode 79 in our season 4 of our podcast, where after a bit of discussion about current events and another tip from the FDNY 2024 tips book, we will go into Boston in August of 2007, where 2 firefighters died during a firefight in a restaurant in a local taxpayer type building after a rapid fire event occurred. We will review and discuss a NIOSH report on this incident. Remember, this is just a few months after the tragic Charleston Super Sofa fire where 9 firefighters were killed in the line of duty. This is a rather long episode with lots of great discussion and debate between myself and my co-hosts, Denis and Doug. You can feel the passion in our opinions to consider and learn from this tragic event. But this is a podcast. You can start and stop as you please. So please settle in while I bring in our co-hosts, Denny and Doug, and fasten your seatbelts for a bumpy ride. Hey, Denny, and hey, Doug, how you guys doing? It is the Waldorf and Statler day today, even though we have Doug along with us. But there's been a bunch of Muppet posts on the internet because apparently it's their day. And because when we're alone, that's what we call the show, Doug.
I guess I'm just one of them in training, following your lead.
That's right, in training. Whoa, big shoes to fill.
Who's the guy in the trash can?
Denis, how you doing? You're still on evacuation alert, or not really?
No, we're fine. They got the fire contained, so they're working on it. So it was not a huge fire. So just for 2 days ago, we had a fire start in the middle of the afternoon, and it was extremely dry day, 35-degree temperatures. Humidity was in the high 20s, and then there was I guess some guys decided they were going to have a campfire in the woods, and then when things caught fire, they decided they weren't going to be responsible for it anymore. And this was right next door to the city. So if the wind had been 15 more degrees in one direction, it would have gotten into the city and we would have had a major conflagration, because it was right behind a lumber mill, or not a lumber mill, but a Kent store, which is a building supply place, and their lumber yard. So that would have got going, and you can just imagine the crap that would have been going from there on. So, and anyway, it was just missing us heading towards another part of town, and they managed to jump all over it and got it redirected. And so it was a bad moment of deja vu, I'll tell you, for an hour. I mean, my wife was bouncing off the walls because she was the one that was home at the time of the last one and saw it roaring up to our front windows and bugged out in time. So a lot of people pretty stressed out over it, and pretty irresponsible behavior. And so we're having a big discussion now in Nova Scotia because there's the Forest Act that allows the government to close the woods to protect the woods on specified reasons. It's been in 35 years, 40 years old, the act. And so suddenly, and it's not the first time they've done this, but suddenly people have got a couple, I must say, have got their nose in a knot and decided they're going to challenge it. So they get down to the official's office and says, "I'm going to the woods. What are you going to do about it?" "Well, I'm going to follow you." So they go in the woods and they come out and they get a $28,000 ticket. They say, "Well, that's not right. I shouldn't have the ticket. I'm going to fight that." I give up. As some guy says, "Get in your truck and drive to Ottawa and complain." So stop lighting fires in the woods. So anyway.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
And so every day here, if you follow what's going on in the fire service, they're having fires every hour of the day in the woods. And in fact, while we were sitting here watching the smoke from this one, which was only about 6 or 7 kilometers away, don't take very long if the wind changed in your direction. Another fire started from a cigarette butt about a block from our house in the woods. But they jumped all over that and managed to get that out. So, but the other one, they were pulling resources. I think they had 30 stations committed to this in the first hour, which I will commend them for getting off the dime this time. So it was a really good thing. And DNR had, I think, 3 helicopters on it, and they had 3 air tractors came in from New Brunswick and dropped retardant on it. And then they had CL 415s came in from, I think, northern New Brunswick, and spent the rest of the afternoon doing water drops all over it. And that helped to contain it because no roads, of course, just paths, trails. And this is in a wildland area. It's a preserve. So anyway, thank goodness they got all over that because it would have been bad news otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's good that they jumped on it, and maybe a bit of a lesson learned a few years ago, maybe. And of course, the awareness is up because it's so dry and there's so many fires. So they know they gotta jump
This
on
is this is drier than I've pretty much ever seen it here.
Yeah.
The maple
Wow.
trees are changing color and dropping their leaves, and it's
Well, yeah,
early
I
August.
heard you say that on your podcast that you participated in the other day. What was it called? The Line or something? And you gave a
The Line
talk.
with Matt Gurney.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, I sent a link.
He's a
to
political
it,
commentator. So yeah,
Right.
It was a good opportunity to talk about what needs to be acknowledged. The fact that fires are a very real thing and they can really affect you, and you need to get firewise or fire smart your property because really it all boils down to looking after yourself in the end of it, right? It's like any emergency, be prepared. Get your 72-hour kit, be ready to go. Look after your property, harden it. Don't pile logs or firewood under your deck, dumb stuff like that people do. So anyways, they're just not thinking, right? They just don't get it. But
I think I got him.
you get burned out, you'll get it pretty fast.
I think I got him on a rant a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can edit all that out.
Hey, Doug, how are you?
I'm good. I mean, segue from what Denny was saying there, I don't know, last week listened to a webinar from a bunch of the fire chiefs around Los Angeles that were part of the big fire there, which was the biggest takeaway I had was that you'll like this. So yeah, their mutual aid agreements are so robust, and like the one, I don't know the geography a whole hell of a lot other than like LA County surrounds LA, and then beyond that I don't know what happens, but there was a couple like Ventura County and Orange County, or a couple of the other county chiefs, I think LA County too, and they basically talked about how like when they get the call, they are completely fine with just sending whatever they need to send, and they'll worry about backfilling from the other direction. And the one fire chief said they had like 100% of their staff recalled for 16 days or something like that. Like they just...
Yeah. I listen to the radio traffic for days every evening. I typically play computer games before I go to bed, and I listened on the radio and during the day when I was doing whatever on the scanner. And it was unbelievable. What, they have 15,000 responders or something in the end on that fire?
I mean, they had more than one fire going at a time.
Right, they had 4 or 5.
And I've heard that one of the fires itself had like 300 engine companies assigned to it, which is like more than FDNY has, which is the biggest department in North America, which is crazy when you kind of think of it in that scope, right? But yeah, they basically, all the chiefs were saying that they've gone to their boards or their elected officials saying like, when they have a fire, we respond like it's us having a fire, because when it's us having a fire, we want them to respond like it's them having a fire. And they've all it sounds like they've all kind of convinced their higher ups that that's a good way of doing things. But they did mention that this has all come from failures in the past. Like they didn't just think of the way to do it out of nowhere. It was fires in the 60s and 70s that were devastating, that like, well, how do we not have that happen again? And this is, so yeah.
I know there are jurisdictions where councils or boards or whatever, have been very concerned about costs and overtime, and and really have impressed on fire chiefs that, you got to keep costs down, got to keep costs down. And that has overflowed into their thinking on responses. And so they will tend to be very reluctant to call in overtime as needed. And that's no way is that the way to run a fire department. I have found from my personal experience that if you have an emergency of a significant size, or you can, and it's your job to know where this thing is going or could go, and you respond robustly and you commit folks to it and you do callback and so forth, and it's a big incident, they're a lot more forgiving about that expenditure when they see what you accomplished, as in, saving the town or saving an historic building, whatever the case may be. It's a good time to be going back afterwards and say, yeah, we have a bill for this, but look what we did.
Well,
and everybody's still traumatized by what it could have been. And so that's a way better way to run.
You don't want to look at
it's like calling people back for snowstorms.
You don't want to look at the citizens of your city or county or whatever and be like, well, sorry that this fire cost you hundreds of billions of dollars, but we saved you millions of overtime. Like, it doesn't make much sense.
Exactly.
They'd rather spend the millions to save the billions, right? I think.
Yeah.
That's what we teach in emergency management, but it's hard to convince people a lot. But that's a good discussion, and you go big or go home. When we were teaching blue card, we would always tell the officers, like, call that second aerial, call that other boat, call whatever it is you need. We won't give you a heck for calling too much, but naturally we're hesitant to send all the horses at once.
But if you're scared to do your job, maybe you're in the wrong job.
Ooh, ouch. Yeah. Okay. Well, we better get on with the show here. Good discussion.
I don't think firefighters or fire departments are usually hesitant to call for help within their own fire department. It's when you're calling outside fire departments where people go, I don't know if we should. I don't know if we should call the mutual aid ladder. Or if your own county had 2 ladders, you wouldn't think twice about calling the other one, probably, is my kind of thought.
Yeah, and that mutual aid or that automatic aid, whatever you want to call it, it needs to be ingrained. It needs to be a habit that we do it all the time. And that's where California is really leading. Of course, in California, the Office of Emergency Services give all the smaller cities, they give them a fire engine and they say, this is yours, use it, abuse it, whatever, keep it for 20 years. We'll send you another one then. And in the meantime, when we call, you have to come. And I was in San Bernardino in 2008 when they had a big fire there. And they had 1,000 firefighters in the city within 3 hours from all over California. They were pre-assembled in task forces and stuff. And I've been preaching to all my Alberta emergency management folks and stuff like that, anybody who will listen, that they need to go and study the system. Oregon is doing the same thing. Where they're helping out municipalities, making a deal with them ahead of time. It's all pre-positioned, pre-planned, pre-done. Here in Alberta, believe it or not, like I was at the Fire Chiefs Conference in May, and somebody stood up on the podium and said, by the way, you're going to get an email from the province asking for resources. The Saskatchewan Ministry of Public Safety was putting out Facebook posts to fire departments saying, please send fire trucks. My old fire department, Dalmany, where I started, their old Smeal pumper, 1989 Smeal Ford pumper, lowest, cheapest thing you could buy, has been up in northern Saskatchewan for 90 days, rotating crews from the little town of Dalmany and Martinsville and Mormon, but this needs to be pre-done. It shouldn't be done ad hoc like we're doing it. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Here we go. Jeez.
Punching above their weight.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. What's happening? Oh, you wanted to talk about another thing, Chicago, Patterson, Doug.
Yeah, so I just saw on Facebook today, we all know the industry-wide issue there is with apparatus right now. And I saw on Facebook one of the firehouses in Chicago got a spare engine because theirs broke. And it was from 1992, spare. And they said it's been on the job longer than every single person in the firehouse has been.
Oh my goodness.
And the deck gun doesn't shut off, so they don't turn it on. They leave it capped, and just complete schmoz of a truck, but it was all they have. And I just thought it was interesting when you think of it in that sense, that it's this is the most senior thing on the fire department. This truck, go use it, please, save lives. It just and it's just crazy.
It is crazy.
But it's
although
not,
years ago,
it's not just Chicago, and it's not just LA we saw for these fires. It's everywhere has trouble getting new trucks. even when you're paying
but that's
for it, it still takes 1,000 days to get it.
but that's a multi-level problem, Doug. It's not fixed by getting a new truck. I mean, I've bought new trucks and it had like a transmission controller, an engine controller go out on, and you couldn't get parts for it. And
Yeah,
so, it was a lot easier to go out and take a wrench to the deck gun valve on a 30-year-old truck than it was to get a controller part out of the US where you couldn't. So
right.
it's a lot of it's about maintenance, and it's about having spares and skilled people, and in my experience, having the priority, in the maintenance system. Like a lot of these cities have a one-stop shop for maintenance. There's no longer a fire department maintenance department anymore. It's not strictly fire department. So you could get bumped because they're building a trailer to water flowers on Main Street. And I always had, well, I would say, discussions about those things.
Yeah, and the electronics is hamstringing us too, because we're so dependent on it in everything. Your car, your motorcycle, your fire truck, and then getting parts is tough. I mean, I emailed the town, a guy I know at the town here in Lacombe, and said, "Why isn't the fountain in the pond over there this summer?" And he said, "Well, the pump died, and we can't get parts from Europe or something." And it's like, oh my goodness, right? So anyway, okay, we want to get on with this.
Well, the other thing
Let's
I
see.
saw recently was, you'll like this, Paul, is Patterson, New Jersey. I don't know the whole story, but they had some kind of catastrophic water main break, and they were bragging on Facebook about how they have mutual aid tankers coming from 100 miles away to be there just in case something happened. They
Awesome.
pre-planned, if something goes wrong, what do we need to do? And like, Patterson's a full-time career fire department, and all these mutual aid tankers that are coming to help and hang out in the fire hall are from like volunteer fire departments 100, 120, 150 miles away from Patterson. So when I saw that, I thought, well, Paul would like the forward thinking of this and think that everybody needs to do that.
Absolutely. You need to be able to reach out to all your neighbors, paid, unpaid, whatever, doesn't matter. And from 100 miles around, we are the emergency services. We're there for when the disaster strikes. We're not there for the car fire and the one house fire and stuff. It's when we have conflagrations. That's really why we're there, and big disasters. So that's great that they had pre-planned that. That's really forward thinking on their emergency management and their fire chiefs and stuff. So that's really cool.
Anyways, I'll stop now and you can carry on with today's show.
Okay, it's all good stuff, so I don't think we'll have a problem with anybody listening to this interesting conversation. A recent article, Wisconsin Fire Department fined by OSHA for a firefighter line of duty death. So that's right up our alley. We talk about line of duty deaths. The Weather Shields Fire Department was cited following a brush fire last year where a firefighter was killed in the line of duty in a UTV, so a side-by-side crash, by the state's OH&S division. Connecticut fined the fire department in connection with safety lapses cited after the crash in Meridian on October 22nd that killed a veteran firefighter who was 66 years old. Firefighters were not wearing seatbelts, not wearing approved headgear, according to the report. So this is the point I wanted to drive home, is that there's nothing wrong with using UTVs. They're great. They save your energy, but they didn't wear their seatbelts. They didn't have approved headgear on. The UTV apparently was overloaded because they had a skid in the back, which, hey, I bought those little Chemtech skids and they work great. But they also had firefighters sitting on the rear of the fire suppression unit. They'd rigged up some seats there or something. They didn't have any UTV operation training, and they didn't have fire suppression wasn't secured to the vehicle. So maybe it was thrown in there for the season or something. So during the brush fire on a mountain, the report said, a firefighter that was killed and 3 other firefighters were using this UTV with a fire suppression unit, essentially a mini fire apparatus, to work on rough terrain. The firefighter who was killed was driving, according to the report. While driving the UTV on an incline to change locations, the unit began to slide on the loose shale. The unit then became unstable and began to roll from side to side. The firefighters sitting on the suppression unit were thrown from the UTV. 2 firefighters sitting in the cab were also thrown about in the cab. The driver then was ejected from the cab and struck by the UTV and sustained fatal injuries. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner found the cause of the death to be head injury and neck injury. Other firefighters suffered non-life-threatening injuries, officials said at the time. The fire department's already taken steps to address violations and enhance safety, including purchasing helmets, implementing new policies on seatbelt use, limiting passenger numbers in the UTV and other issues, and providing UTV training. And that's something we did in Clearwater. You had to do UTV training, you had to wear your seatbelts, and you had to wear the proper helmets. Although we debated fire helmet versus motorcycle helmet, but we went to lots of calls with UTVs with civilians where it would roll and the passenger or driver would slip upwards and the roll cage would hit the passenger or the driver in the head against the ground. And of course, having too many people on there, and usually the tanks in those little UTVs, the water tanks, are not baffled as per NFPA because they're so small. But even though they're small, they're a large, significant amount of weight in the UTV, which might be the side to side they were talking about.
And the other thing is, wearing your seatbelt keeps you in your seat inside
Right.
the vehicle, but the vehicle has to have an adequate roll cage on it. And if you're going to stick 1,000 pounds of firefighting pack in the back, was the UTV designed to continue to protecting you in a rollover with that kind of weight bolted into the back? So,
Yeah.
you can't just cobble these things together yourself and hope for the best, because this is a clear indicator where it can go wrong. This is not running down Main Street, in a parade. Even then you'd have issues with brakes, for instance. Could your brakes handle it? So it needs to be a package. You need to have the proper design, proper operating conditions, proper equipment for the guys, and training. It's a package. It's like anything else. Yeah. So we talked about that previous charges that had been laid under OSHA. There was also a charge in Canada for a driving infraction. So that happened this year in July of 2025. So in the evening, the Ontario Provincial Police responded to a single vehicle collision that involved a fire truck, and it was in Laurier Township, which is in southern Ontario. And the result was a 52-year-old person who was driving this truck. It was a fire truck. He was charged with careless driving and furthermore was driving the fire truck without an air brake endorsement. So he did not have the proper license to be driving that truck, which suggests that he's never been properly trained. Don't know that, although he may have been driving an air brake truck for years, likely. And there's usually not a lot of enforcement against volunteer fire departments, but in this case, it came to bite them. Anyway, the driver was issued a 3-day suspension and after registering a blood alcohol level within the warning range, so less than 0.8, but above the number. So he was impaired. And I saw pictures of this, and basically the truck was nose down over an embankment into a ditch on a road. So lost control, probably put the wheel over the edge. So this is a fire truck. So this guy is a fire department officer driving the truck impaired and had an accident. So wherever he was going, if it had been an incident, he'd have not gotten there. And I know personally of another incident where something very similar happened, minus the accident. The guy was charged.
So let's not drive our fire trucks impaired. Let's make sure we have the right training to drive them, and be careful, because if you don't get there, then you're just another incident slowing down the response.
In this case, blocking the road, actually.
Yeah. Okay, so quick FDNY tip here, talking about photovoltaic arrays on dwellings, both multifamily and single family. So that's solar panels for those of you that don't know. Photovoltaic arrays, these are coming more and more and more. Europe actually has a mandate, I think. They have to have all buildings, commercial buildings, have to have photovoltaic arrays by 2035. And there's getting a lot of fires from these solar panels because the standards for the installation of these is sometimes lacking, and the installation sometimes lacking, or just weather, right? It's out, it's exposed, it's on the roof. So they continue to be installed on rooftops in many buildings throughout New York City, because this is the FDNY tips book that Doug had found, and we've been sharing one tip every episode. We can expect this trend to continue, but they do present several hazards to firefighters. Consider the following points. Some photovoltaic array installations, the steel framework is erected, which supports the elevated panels. Braces supporting this framework have been discovered attached to parapet walls. If the roof fails, a secondary collapse of the parapet wall may occur. In H-type buildings, which is they often have a lot of H-type buildings in New York City, they often contain 2x4 inverted roof beams. These roofs tend to collapse very quickly during cockblock fires, so attic fires, which we're going to talk about in today's episode. The solar array systems are often installed directly on the roof deck. This may limit the ability to cut the roof and create punishing conditions on the top floor. When the photovoltaic arrays are placed on a roof deck, a layer of gypsum board cover is often installed as a fire barrier. This may cause the roof deck to weaken, yet appear normal. The greatest hazard of the photovoltaic arrays, though, to firefighters is direct current DC shock. When exposed to sunlight, the PV arrays will continue to generate electricity and energize the wiring in the conduit and the components up to the inverter, which is in the building somewhere. The power cannot be removed quickly. The conduit is often elevated a few inches above the roof deck, so use caution during cutting operations and walking on the roof deck. Wiring may also run through the cockloft space. Use caution when pulling ceilings. Shutting power off at the main electrical panel does not ensure the power to the building is removed. This holds true for opening a photovoltaic disconnect switch. That's a new standard that came out about 5 or 7 years ago. You had to have a disconnect switch, but it's usually at the electrical panel, and therefore it doesn't disconnect the solar panel from the wiring to the electrical panel. There may be a battery bank if they're trying to store energy, of course, which also could be a hazard. And the rooftop disconnect should not be relied upon since they're mainly installed for maintenance. Shut off electrical power to the inverter does not ensure that the circuits aren't energized. So something to think about, something to worry about is solar panels on roofs, and we're going to see lots and lots more. I know metropolitan cities especially are getting lots in the residential areas, and those things are always energized. Even the floodlights on the trucks can energize them.
Yeah, and the higher the efficiency on those things, which is every new install is generally more efficient, they're more sensitive. Even moonlight will cause a current. So maybe not enough to keep your house running, but certainly enough to get a nasty shock.
Yes, if you're standing in the water. Yeah. Okay, so this week's episode, we're going to Boston in 2007 from the NIOSH report 2007-32. This is where we got all the information from. In August 29th of 2007, a 55-year-old male career firefighter, victim number 1, and a 52-year-old male career firefighter, victim number 2, died while conducting interior attack to locate, confine, and extinguish a fire that was located in the cockloft, basically the attic, of a restaurant.
The Boston Fire Department is a career fire department consisted of 1,600 uniformed firefighters. The department has 35 fire stations and serves a population of about 600,000 people in a geographic area of approximately 45 square miles. The PPE, both victims were wearing bunker coats, station pants, and safety boots. The bunker coats that were worn by the victims and issued by the department were reported by the manufacturer to meet the requirements of NFPA 1971. The victims used Scott LifePak 50 4.5 self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBA, equipped with integrated pack alert SE personal alert safety systems, or PASS devices. The training and experience, the state has no minimum training requirements to become a firefighter. At the time of the incident, the fire department provided training for recruits to meet the state's suggested curriculum for NFPA Firefighter 1 and 2. Victim number 1 was a firefighter with more than 14 years of experience. He received training on topics such as the maze drill, EMS responder, CPR, AED, scene size up. Victim number 2 was a firefighter with more than 19 years of experience. He received training such as the maze drill, EMS responder, CPR, AED, and ICS. The fire department provides annual training to firefighters according to their company functions or specialties. Both of the victims and their companies should have received annual fire training according to their functions, which included Back to Basics. The Back to Basics drill consisted of advancing hand lines, deploying ground ladders during live fire training at the fire department's fire academy. However, the fire department's burn building at the academy had been condemned as being unsafe to conduct live fire training. Therefore, the fire department had suspended the Back to Basics training for several years prior to this incident.
Similar to Baltimore, where that fatality, right, is their burned building was condemned, and therefore training was either not existent or modified, which killed a firefighter. The
Yeah,
structure in this,
I've had those discussions with council before about how important it is to have training facilities. You know, there's reluctance to spend money when the money is tight, and that's an area where a lot of folks who are not firefighters see, you know, that the money is not necessarily well spent, but it absolutely is. Either
yeah,
if you don't spend it on training facilities, then you're learning on the job at the fires, and sometimes that goes wrong.
yeah, that's
If
a
you don't
huge
if
deal.
you
I
don't
get,
spend it on training, you'll spend it on a funeral.
yeah, exactly, which is much worse. So the structure, this was an old building, construction in 1930, single story, sort of a taxpayer, basically a little strip mall of ordinary construction. The building consisted of 4 commercial occupancies that were all in business at the time of the fire. The occupancy was where the fatal fire occurred was the second occupancy from left to right in this building and had been a Chinese restaurant since 1955. The dimensions were 90 feet wide by 60 feet deep. The restaurant was 32 feet wide by 60 feet deep, with a suspended ceiling being approximately 9 feet high. The restaurant did not have a common cock loft or basement with the other occupancy of the building. The suspended ceiling was painted 12-inch cellulose tiles that were stapled wood furring strips. There was a 17-inch void space between the suspended ceiling and the original ceiling above. The original ceiling consisted of stamped steel sheet metal that was attached directly to the ceiling joists. Due to the slope of the roof, the void space above the original ceiling to the bottom of the roof deck varied from 17 inches in the rear to 30 inches in the front, so a huge space up there. A single exterior door at the front led to a vestibule just inside the restaurant, very common in these older buildings. There was another door to the left side of the vestibule, which led into the dining area. The dining area was carpeted and had a maximum capacity of 80 customers. Seating consisted of fixed booths and portable tables in the center and the right hand side. The left hand side consisted of an aisle flanked with booths that led to the restrooms at the back and the kitchen and the rear exit. The kitchen was in the right rear of the restaurant and was approximately 18 feet by 16 feet. Access was through a set of swinging doors. It had a fixed center food prep table and had suspended metal rack for storing cookware and supplies. There was an addition on the rear of the kitchen, which consisted of a storage room and a walk-in freezer. The interior walls, which were a demising partition on the Bravo side and Delta side, were also of ordinary construction, brick, wood, plaster, and separated the restaurant from its exposures and from the floor to the bottom of the roof deck above. As I mentioned before, the roof was sloped towards the back and had a 3-foot parapet wall on the front. It consisted of rubber built-up roofing with backer board over the original tar and gravel roof. There was a 3-ton heating, ventilation, and air conditioning unit on the roof that weighed approximately 400 pounds. So 3-ton was the capacity of going, wow, it's heavy, 400 pounds. There was also a skylight that measured 3 feet by 3 feet that both located over the kitchen area. The kitchen exhaust system and ductwork. After the fire, the exhaust system was inspected by the fire department, the business owner, and a fire protection equipment company, and a contracted engineering firm. The system consisted of galvanized sheet metal ranging from 26 to 22 gauge thickness that's typically found in residential heating and cooling. It was connected with sheet metal screws and dovetailed joints used in heating and cooling operations. It wasn't a rated assembly. More on this later. It was just a home kind of heating assembly.
Right. So just to sum up here, Paul, we've got the HVAC system is hanging from the ceiling. The exhaust system in the kitchen is hanging from the ceiling. The other part of the HVAC system is sitting on the roof, and in the kitchen you've got a suspended storage unit
Rack.
over the prep, and that's hanging from the ceiling also.
Yeah.
So all of those dead loads on top of whatever is on the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
Weather
Good
loads.
point. Good point. The weather was clear. Temperature was 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind was between 9 and 20 miles per hour, with gusts up to 24 miles per hour from the south, which again, wind could be a factor in this. The equipment and personnel that responded in the first alarm which were directly involved in the incident. Basically, there was lots more later, I'm sure. 2 ladders with a driver, operator, and 2 firefighters each. 3 engines with a driver, operator, and 2 firefighters each. So they had staffing of 4 per truck. 1 rescue with an officer, driver, and 2 firefighters. 2 district chiefs. 1 became the IC, and 1 acting deputy chief.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the investigation. In other words, the incident itself. So these are the information that came out of the investigation. So on August 29th in 2007, at about 21:04 hours, so in the evening, probably middle of their after supper, the restaurant employee called 911 to report a fire where he was working at this restaurant. At 21:06 hours, 2 minutes later, fire alarm office dispatched a first alarm assignment, which included engine 30, engine 53, engine 55, so 3 engines, ladder 25, ladder 16, so 2 ladders, rescue 2, and district 10. So district 10 would be expected to be the IC. District 10 acknowledged the call at 21:07 hours, so 3 minutes gone already. So ladder 25 first to arrive and arrived about 21:08, so 4 minutes after the call. Assumed incident command and reported fire showing from the roof area. Engine 30 arrived on the scene shortly thereafter and connected to a hydrant with a 4-inch supply line. The officer from ladder 25 entered the restaurant with no smoke conditions in the front seating area. So he came in through that vestibule and slightly towards the left to get through that door. He proceeded into the kitchen, which was in the rear right. He observed fire in the ceiling above the exhaust hood with light smoke conditions in the kitchen. So ladder 25 raised the aerial ladder to the front side of the A-B corner, and the kitchen, remember, is in the Charlie Delta corner. And the ladder 25 driver climbed the ladder to the roof, and he brought with him a rake, an axe, and a power saw. He felt that the roof felt spongy as ladder 25 driver noted heavy gray smoke pushing from the cupolas. So there's actually a small little cupola sitting on top of the roof to help ventilation in a normal roof like that of a building this age, not all that uncommon. The ladder 25 driver then went to the rear of the roof to size up the conditions. He noticed fire extending from beneath the air conditioning unit, heavy smoke from the vent nearest the air conditioning unit, and light smoke from the far roof vent. So a number of vents on the roof. The ladder 25 driver could not remove the top of the vent nearest the air conditioning unit. He started to cut a ventilation hole in the roof towards the front of the building besides the cupola. The engine 30 officer and a pipeman from engine 30, who was actually victim number 1, advanced an 1.75-inch uncharged hose line into the front of the restaurant. So the engine 30 officer and victim 1 encountered a smoke condition in the kitchen and put on their face pieces. The smoke's gone from light smoke at the ceiling and visible fire at the ceiling down to enough smoke in the kitchen to mask up. So the officer from engine 30 exited the structure to request that the line be charged as the ladder 25 man opened up and entered the structure. Ladder 25 officer got information from a civilian about the possibility of PEPs being boarded in the basement of the B-side exposure. Remember, there's 4 units in a row here. At 21:09 hours, the officer from ladder 25 called for a second alarm for the purposes of the exposure. The ladder 25 officer then radioed engine 30 pump operator and ordered the engine 30 handline be charged. At 20:11 hours, District 10 arrived on scene and called the alarm office and took command of the incident. He did a size up from his position at the front of the structure on the alpha side and noticed fire extending from the roof and a hand line entering the front door of the restaurant. That'd be that 1.75-inch hand line. He only saw the engine 30 firefighter hooking up the hydrant and assumed that he had 7 firefighters inside the structure. During this time, ladder 16 arrived on scene, and the officer and a ladder 16 open-up man entered the restaurant. The ladder 16 officer ordered the ladder 16 rake man to assist engine 53. The ladder 25 officer and ladder 25 rake man followed the crew from ladder 16 and entered the restaurant. So now we've got 3 crews inside, I think it is, Paul. They proceeded to the rear of the dining room, heading towards the kitchen. The ladder 25 officer and the ladder 16 open up man removed the left side of the swing doors leading into the kitchen area.
So there's a note here from the investigation that says the ladder 16 officer noticed fire dripping down from the ceiling on the Delta side wall adjacent to the kitchen area. He described it as appearing to be dripping plastic or grease from the void space above the drop ceiling. He noticed that the fire was burning through the wood roof joists. The ladder 25 open up man, victim number 2, was off towards the Delta side in the dining area, so in front of the kitchen.
Those wood roof joists are unlikely to be the real roof joists. They're more likely to be the wooden joists that are holding up this stapled on combustible ceiling.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing, because you wouldn't see them. There was a metal roof above that on the ceiling.
Yeah. Like I was saying before we went on here that I've had fires in buildings like this, and those stapled on paper ceiling tiles, and there has to be a wood structure above holding them up, and that burns extremely readily.
Yeah, and if there's a bunch of grease up there because of the poorly installed sheet metal venting, who knows?
Yeah, possibility.
So, yeah. At approximately the same time, Engine 30 officer had re-entered and was backing up victim 1 on the nozzle, flowing water on the fire from inside the kitchen. The ladder 25 officer was behind the Engine 30 officer on the handline. The Engine 30 firefighter moved to the other side, the Charlie side of the center island in the kitchen to get a better angle on the fire that was located in that Charlie Delta corner of the kitchen. After removing the swing door, the ladder 16 firefighter saw that the kitchen was congested and exited to check for extension on the Bravo side exposure. When he turned to exit, he noticed in the ceiling area what appeared to be red lines glowing. They were running from front to back. During this time, an off-duty firefighter arrived on the scene. District 10 had the off-duty firefighter vent the front windows. There's a note here again from NIOSH. It's believed that the ladder 16 firefighter saw the wood furring strips that the ceiling tiles were attached to glowing with fire. When the ladder 16 firefighter exited, he also noticed that the window on the left side of the front door had been removed, and it was intact when he had entered, so someone had taken it out already.
Yeah, I was going to mention that when you see those furring strips burning like that, you're moments away from a complete collapse.
Yeah, they're probably burning from above, right?
Yeah. And they're not very thick. They're just like 3/4, half inch.
Furring. Yeah,
they're not heavy.
No. The ladder 16 officer requested another handline from District 10 for the first floor front. During this time, the ladder 16 firefighter was on the roof assisting the ladder 25 firefighter to cut a ventilation hole. The ladder 25 firefighter made 4 cuts and his saw stalled. Engine 53 was ordered by District 10 to stretch a 2.5-inch line into the Bravo side exposure. The ladder 25 driver told the ladder 16 rakeman to open up any doors in the rear of the structure. At approximately 21:12 hours, so we've been there 6 minutes or something. I think it started 2:07. The ladder 25 officer told the ladder 25 rakeman to stay with the handline as he went to look for an exit on the rear of the structure. The Engine 30 officer and victim number 1 started to hear popping from the ceiling as it was coming down upon them. Smoke and heat conditions intensified, forcing them to the floor. Ladder 16 officer moved from the Charlie side of the dining room over to Engine 30's handline due to the deteriorating conditions. Smoke conditions now banking to the floor, and heat forced the ladder 16 officer to his knees. At approximately 21:13 hours, as he awaited for additional handline, he heard the loud crack, and within a minute, he heard a loud rush. He described it as sounding like a freight train as rapid fire took place, blowing down the ceiling tiles, and a fireball blew out the front of the structure. He described that the dining room turned orange. He felt hot water falling on him from the Engine 30 handline in the kitchen. Ladder 25 officer returned to the kitchen. He could not find an exit due to the heavy smoke. The smoke and heat conditions in the kitchen were significantly worse. The smoke was banked to the floor with zero visibility and intense heat. The Ladder 25 officer could hear Victim 1 flowing water. He followed the sound and told Engine 30 officer and Victim 1 to exit the structure. They all turned and started to exit the kitchen. They became tangled up in the debris that was falling from the kitchen as they attempted to get their bearings. All that storage rack above and the pots and pans and stuff like that over that island.
Yeah,
The,
plus the ceiling and the structure that held up the ceiling,
the furring
that'd all be
strips.
on there too. Yeah.
The Ladder 25 and Engine 30 officers found the double kitchen doors and knew that they had a straight line to the front. They thought that Victim 1 was with them. They exited as Ladder 25 officer was out of air and Engine 30 officer's low air alarm was sounding. There's another note here that says it's believed that Victim 1 attempted to follow the handline, which led him towards the rear of the structure. It was snaked around to the back from those doors into the kitchen. The Ladder 25 brakeman got separated from the officers and remained in the kitchen.
So we've heard many times before, right? A lot of these incidents where people get separated, right? Since the officer left the building and thought the firefighter was behind him, and he wasn't.
Yeah, and the crew accountability, right? They're all mixed up with their crews here, which again is a recipe for losing someone in the mixture. But you can see it's a small place, and they're all working together, so you can see it happening. And one guy's backing up the other guy's line and stuff like that. At 21:14 hours, victim number 2 emergency distress signal was received by the fire alarm office. At this time, ladder 16 open up man was back at the front of the restaurant after checking for extension in the Bravo side exposure. He was removing the front window to the right side of the door. And the note here says that this was after the fire event and there weren't any flames, only smoke coming from the window to the left of the front door. The Ladder 25 and Engine 30 officers exited about the same time, stating that there were 5 that were firefighters still inside. Nasty.
And we should probably clarify here for people that aren't familiar with Boston or East Coast or even firefighters that the pipe man that they're calling the pipe man is a firefighter off the back of the engine that is on the hose line on the nozzle. And the ladder open up man and rake man are firefighters, usually the back of a ladder truck that are the open up man would be the like go inside and open up the walls and the drywall and the ceiling. And I'm sure the rake man has some kind of pike pole or fire rake they bring with them to open things up inside and poke ceilings and stuff. Just so if people aren't familiar with the terminology from Boston. So back to the event. The Engine 30 hydrant man followed the hand line through the front door. Visibility was 0 with extreme heat conditions coming from the right side of the dining room area and into the kitchen. The Engine 30 hydrant man ran into the Ladder 25 rake man. The Engine 30 hydrant man would be the other firefighter that's not the pipe man. It would be the second firefighter off the back of the engine. So the Engine 30 hydrant man ran into the Ladder 25 rake man in the kitchen while looking for the Engine 30 crew. The Ladder 25 rake man did not know the location of the Engine 30 crew, so the Engine 30 hydrant man followed the hand line until he encountered the center workstation in the kitchen and his low air alarm was sounding. He was forced to turn around and follow the hand line, and he and the Ladder 25 rake man backed out of the building. At 21:15 hours, the fire alarm office, or the dispatch, called incident commander to inform him that they had received victim number 2's emergency distress signal, which is a button they can push on their radio that sends a signal out to dispatch. The fire alarm office continued to call victim number 2 on all of the channels with no response. District 12, which would be the second district chief coming on the call, was informed by the IC that there were 2 firefighters missing. The IC then went to the rear of the structure to initiate a search with Rescue 2, the officer and 2 additional members from Rescue 2 who had just arrived on scene. At 21:18 hours, District 12 arrived, called the fire alarm office, and requested an engine company to provide protection for Rescue 2 while they conducted their search. Rescue 2 members heard a pass device and found victim number 1 with his handline. He was face down, his helmet and face piece were off, and he was covered with debris. The members had difficulty removing victim number 1 due to him being entangled in debris and wires. After he was removed, emergency medical treatment was initiated en route to the local hospital where he was pronounced dead. There's a note here. Victim number 1 had trauma to his head at the hairline level. It was reported by his crew members that he was on air when he was operating the hand line before the rapid fire event. It is believed that the trauma happened after the rapid fire event and possibly contributed to him removing his face piece.
Something heavy hit him.
Yeah. During this time, the Ladder 16 open-up man entered through the front door and had difficulty entering due to debris that was covering the floor. Engine 55 repositioned their hand line through the right window on the then Alpha side and advanced approximately 10 to 15 feet inside the dining area. All 3 members of Engine 55 received burns to their knees because the floor was extremely hot as they fought the fire in zero visibility conditions. The Ladder 16 open-up man crawled over tables and piles of debris with visibility inside the dining area near zero due to the dark smoke. He was then hit by a hose stream and it knocked off his helmet. He found his helmet and saw a red light. He went to the red light and found victim number 2 sitting face up, facing the kitchen with his face piece on and his helmet off. The red light he saw was from victim number 2's radio, which might have been in conjunction with him pushing his emergency button. The red light was flashing.
Exactly.
He yelled for help as he tried to free victim number 2, who was caught under debris. Members from Engine 55 arrived and assisted with the removal of victim number 2's SCBA in order to free him from the debris. None of the members assisting with finding and removing victim number 2 remembered hearing his pass device. He was then removed through the front right window, and emergency medical treatment was initiated en route to the hospital where he was pronounced dead.
Yeah, terrible to be caught in that flashover in that ancient building and everything, ceiling all falling down on you and stuff.
There's those buildings of that age and the layout of this building. We've all been in these restaurants, Chinese food restaurants. They all look the same. I don't care where you go. You walk in the door, it's like you've been there before. But consider also that, the roof structure and all the modifications, it's all timber. And it's like, this was built in the 30s. So you got like 70, 80-year-old timbers up there, dry, been subjected to the heat of the summer sun on the roof and subjected to the heat from kitchens and everything. So tinder, dry. It doesn't take much, and boy, they would really get going.
You hang a bunch of stuff off the ceiling, air conditioning unit that it was never designed for.
Yeah, and if the the grill or the deep fryer vent system was not tight and was blowing grease-laden vapors out into that space, well, then that would all be up in there also. So you can imagine how you could have all it needed was oxygen, right? And as soon as the oxygen got up in there, you got an intense fire. And it's all coming down because it's all wood. Everything up there is wood holding it up.
The cause of death, certificates listed the cause of death for victim 1 and 2 as thermal injuries and asphyxia. Note, there have been reports, this is a note from NIOSH, there have been media reports or alleged substance abuse that were discovered during the toxicological screening of both victims. NIOSH has requested copies of autopsy reports from several different sources, including the fire department, fire commissioner, medical examiner, and the district attorney's office, but they were not able to obtain any official toxicology information. Therefore, NIOSH is not able to comment on the alleged condition of the victim. And this also came up in the department's Bureau of Investigation report, and they said it was out of their scope of the report to comment on the mental condition of the victims. So there's a rumor of that they may not have been 100% alert, unfortunately. Contributing factors. So NIOSH occupational injuries, of course, are often the result of one or more contributing factors in key events and larger sequence of events ultimately result in the injury or fatality. NIOSH investigators identified the following items as key contributing factors that in this incident that had ultimately led to the fatality: insufficient occupational health and safety program, ineffective incident management system at the incident. I mean, these are always the same almost. Insufficient incident management training and requirements, insufficient tactics and training, ineffective communications, delay in establishing a rapid intervention team, inadequate building code enforcement and development, and inadequate turnout gear and personal protective equipment. And we're going to get into all these now with the recommendations. I do want to say we were reading this week, we sent around amongst ourselves the report that says the problem with the NIOSH reports is they only look at the facts and they really don't have any way of discovering what was going on in the firefighters' lives and the fire department's situation, all that during the fire. We have no idea what their mental state was or what was going on in their lives and stuff like that. And when you do an investigation weeks, months after, there's no way to get that out. So that something that's missed in the NIOSH reports, but we're all aware of it. There's no way to figure out what it was, right, Denny?
Yeah, it's we're human beings, right? And it's we're not automatons, we're not robots. So if you didn't sleep the night before, or you're working your second job the night before, and you were tired, and or you were distracted by something going on in your life, or you had a dispute at the fire station with your officer. Any number of these things can all affect your mental ability to be prepared to do the job, and or even sometimes your ability to think clearly. So yeah, none of that's there, right? So sometimes we read just the bare facts and say this guy did that, and we're all sitting here going, "What did he do that for?" And sometimes it was because they of these other conditions, these other situations. We just don't know that for the most part. Sometimes we do, but usually not. Anyway, recommendation number 1. Fire departments should develop, implement, and enforce an occupational health and safety program in accordance with NFPA 1500. So NFPA 1500, standard for a fire department occupational safety and health program. I'll remind you this incident happened in 2007. The discussion on that is that the risk for fatal injury among firefighters is high compared to other occupations. There is an increasing body of scientific literature, again, 2007, demonstrating that organizational practices that demonstrate top-level management commitment to safety will establish and foster compliance with safe policies and practices. In other words, if management leads from the front, you're going to get a better compliance. And workers need to be involved through their health and safety committees and or being involved in writing SOPs and SOGs, all that stuff. But they need to be involved in identifying safety hazards and promoting solutions that are effective in reducing worker injuries. There's got to be a culture, too, in the department that accepts that and promotes that. The department SOPs did not effectively cover areas at that time, such as risk management. In other words, should we be inside? What's at risk? What can be accomplished? Competency in fireground operations. Their training ground had been closed. Their live fire training ground had been closed for several years. Fitness for duty. These guys weren't even wearing all of their protective equipment. And then the whole discussion as to whether they were fit for duty and their training background and training. So all of these were all factors. SOPs didn't effectively cover these areas.
This reminds me of Charleston, the way this is written, that what they're thinking. Oh, this is probably written before Charleston because I think that was 2009. But the same kind of things found here, impacted the Charleston event where the 9 firefighters were killed, right? Yeah. Training, SOPs, risk management, competency, very similar to that report.
Yeah. It's some people will be shocked, as a Boston big city fire department. People would have trouble believing that situations like this or conditions like this exist, right? But the reality is it's people, right? It's the people involved, and whether they're aware of the deficiencies and whether they're just, that's just the way we do things. That's why it's so important to have people involved in this circle, this cycle of looking at risk, addressing the risk, seeing how we're doing, and looking at it again, right? So,
and a lot of municipal administrations between fire chiefs and senior officers and senior officials in the administration. I mean, if they're going through a revolving door of people because the city's hard to deal with, or you're spending too much money, or whatever it is, and that can weigh down on the whole organization. And these are organizations that need to be highly efficient and effective. And it's a huge challenge to keep that going, especially under financial duress because of whatever reasons.
You lose sight of the main objective, protecting your people.
I just looked. This was 2 months after Charleston. That was June of 07. This was August of 07. And we should, I don't know, not an excuse, but a factor or whatever, is the mayor of Boston at this time, and I think he was the mayor for like 20 years, hated the fire department. Gave them no money. I mean, it came up in the Kevin Kelly one where the ladder truck had low maintenance, an old truck.
Oh yeah, the brakes. Yeah, right.
The Boston Fire, like, I can believe their building was condemned because they were getting low or no money from the city. It was like, just figure it out. You get what you get, figure it out. And this is the result of. So I agree with you. Sorry, I hit my mic there. I agree with you that yes, fire departments, you need to be efficient and blah, blah, blah. But if you're getting nothing to start with, you're putting your guys at, you're behind the 8 ball to start with, which makes it even harder on the guys.
Yeah, no, we've seen it so many places.
Yeah. Easy to get demoralized, but even without resources, it's nice to think that with good leadership, you can still do the best with what you have, right? You always have the option to stand outside and say, "There's nobody in this building. We're not entering." That's there if you have the knowledge and the confidence to do that. The leadership is there. So I completely get where you're coming from. I've been in a department where I had no money and couldn't spend the money, but that doesn't mean that you should be bad firefighters. It just means that you've got to adapt, I guess.
Hey, yeah,
you've got to be positive about it. And it sounds easy to say, I know, but it takes an effort. Yes, it does.
Lacombe County, the county wouldn't pay for a pump test. The city would pump test their trucks, but the county absolutely refused to pay for a pump test. It doesn't need it by law for 20 years until it's 20 years old. We're not going to pay for it, and the truck won't draft, and you're out on calls. And the Firefighters Association paid for the pump test. And, we got heck for doing it. But we had it done anyway, and that's the problems. Yeah, Lacombe.
And I find it easy to sit back and say, like, well, it's easy to stand there and say, oh, there's nobody inside, but we shouldn't go in. But this says, Ladder 25 arrived on scene, assumed command, reported fire showing from the roof, and they went inside to 0 smoke conditions in the building.
Yeah, they were fooled by the cockloft. Yeah,
every career fire department in North America is going into that building. Every single one.
But ladder 25 on the roof said, I got fire coming out around the AC unit. That was their clue.
Yeah, but risk assessment is not a point in time. Risk assessment is a continuum. You have to continuously do risk assessment. Conditions change, your tactics change. That has to be the case.
And they didn't change. Once you're stuck in the tactic, you just keep on doing it. That's the problem. It's hard to change. Yeah. It's hard to admit that, hey, we got to change tactics. And that's a senior command training point, is that don't be afraid to change.
Yeah, and we already know from the narrative previously that guys saw clear indicators that there was problems about to occur.
It was the same in that church fire we did last month, and they saw fire in the wall, and they saw other stuff happening, and the steeple collapsed, and then the roof collapsed on the guys. We have to be able to continually assess our safety of our situation, especially if you're not rescuing somebody.
Yeah, armchair quarterbacking, but still good principles.
Yeah. Okay, Doug.
Recommendation number 2 is fire departments should ensure that their members are thoroughly trained, understand, and utilize the incident management system and all emergency incidents. The discussion is NFPA 1500, the standard on fire department or occupational safety and health programs, and NFPA 1561, the standard on emergency services incident management system. Both state that an incident management system should be utilized at all emergencies, including but not limited to just training exercises. The fire department in this incident had a standard operating procedure covering the implementation of the IMS, but it was not followed and proved to be ineffective at this incident. NIOSH investigators identified several examples in this incident in which recognized guidelines for IMS were not followed. Specific examples include incident command was not established by the first arriving officer, incident command was never formally transferred, a lack of an established accountability system to track firefighters on scene, no safety officer was assigned, and RIT was not established before conducting interior operations. Any comments?
Exactly. Like we keep coming over the same thing. We have to use the ICS or IMS system. That's why California adopted it after the fires in the 60s or 70s. They had all the resources in the world, but they couldn't manage them. Now, fast forward 50 years when they had the Palisades fire, no firefighters were killed, and they managed an immense event, and they did it textbook. Like I teach ICS, and I listened on the radio on the command channel, and I was in awe listening. We had the same thing happen with Baltimore with the 3 firefighters that were killed in 2021, I think it was, where ICS was cited. The incident commander said himself that he was overwhelmed. He had 26 direct reports at one time or something. And since then, Baltimore has trained on ICS, and they're religiously following it. When the ship hit the bridge, I listened to the audio, and they did a textbook job of ICS. But we have to do it. ICS saves firefighters. It's the best system out there to protect our people.
I was going to say, yeah, I can hear people saying, "Oh yeah, there's that laundry list of ICS stuff, and they didn't do it." But really, it did have an impact. It's that command was not established by the first riding officer, so that was the guy on the ladder. I forget 15 or 25, whichever it was. So clearly, he never announced, "I'm in command." And when he didn't announce I'm in command, he didn't actually do the things that you expect an incident commander to do, like do a 360 or do a size up, report what's needed, that kind of stuff. Like there's no report that any of that happened, although some of it might have. Incident command was never formally transferred. So when the district chief or battalion chief arrived, that would have been a formal transfer so that everybody knew that the chief was on scene and the chief was now in charge. So that didn't happen. So was that important? It could be important by knowing who to report to, because the guy, the captain on the ladder truck, was actually inside the building. There was a lack of an established accountability system. Why is that important? Well, when the chief arrived on scene and assumed command, we assume he assumed command because he took it, but he did report it. He assumed everybody was inside because he could only see one guy on the street. That was the hydrant man. Well, everybody else must be inside. Well, in fact, there were guys on the roof. There were some guys inside, but where were they? Nobody knew. There was no safety officer assigned, so safety officer, one of his jobs would have been to be looking at that risk, seeing if the tactics are appropriate. The risk, this is a 70-year-old building, you got fire in the roof, we got stuff on the roof, we got guys inside, we got guys opening up windows and providing ventilation into the building, which is only going to do one thing for the fire, it's going to cause it to accelerate, so forth. So that had a direct impact. The RIT was not established for conducting interior operations. The rescue truck took over RIT. Well, they arrived well into the incident from the point of view of guys being inside. The guys are already inside. And then when they committed rescue to go inside, they didn't even have a backup for those. They called an engine company to come to protect the rescue company. That was in the narrative. Well, the rescue company's already going in to get the guys, and they found them right away. So if the RIT team had been on scene and in place earlier, they might have found those guys earlier and might maybe had a different outcome. But
yeah,
anyway,
even
so
if they had sectored off, even if they'd sectored off one officer to be the inside guy, right? One guy, the roof guy, one guy, the inside guy, or the back guy, or whatever, they would have been able to communicate with command directly, saying, "Hey, things are deteriorating in here, by the way." And the roof guy goes, "I got fire coming through the roof," and then command could make that decision to go, "Hey, everybody out, yank on your air horns, and let's get out of here."
Yeah. Now we don't have everything that went on.
No.
I mean, we're only getting what the NIOSH is reporting. So some of the stuff I'm saying may have actually occurred. We don't know that for sure. The fact that it's flagged here makes you wonder.
It was hard for me to follow times as we were talking, but do you guys know off the top of your head how long it was from like on scene to members missing? Because I feel like NIOSH and ICS is very command driven opposed to policy driven. I think when the Boston Fire Department shows up, everybody knows the first officer there is command until the chief gets there, regardless if he says it on the radio or not. They just know he's command. And they don't need command to tell everybody what to do, which we are all used to command assigning people because their policy already dictates first engine, first ladder, second. It's just, you just go do. You don't need to be told. You don't need to be commanded to do anything. And I think that's what happened here. And I think they also know that when the chief gets there, he's command. It doesn't need to be, hey, I'm here. Okay, hey, you're command now. They just know, chief's here, he's command. I'm going to change from being mobile command, doing what I was doing as the Ladder 25 officer, to only doing that. You're command now. You know what's going on. The thing about not knowing where guys are, hang on, I let you talk, let me talk. Not knowing where guys are is, again, I'm assuming the Boston Fire Department has a procedure for the first in ladder company goes inside. The driver goes to the roof like he did. The engine establishes a water supply and stretches a hand line. So the chief should know where all those guys are because the procedure and policies say what they're supposed to do. And it says that there's no safety officer. That's bullshit. There was a safety officer. He was just command at the same time. If you're not delegating a job, you are that job.
That's
now,
true.
That's why I asked how long it was from when this all started to when they went 8 minutes. That you're saying?
Yep. 8 minutes.
District 12 showed up at some point. He's coming from second due district chief. Could be an 8-minute drive. He could already be, when I get there, I am the safety officer. He just wasn't there yet. So I feel like they're throwing a lot of shade on things that probably were in the process, went bad too early.
As per the Routley report, that is what killed the guys in Charleston. The chief says, if I'm on scene, I'm in command. And the deputy chief was in the front and goes, well, you were here, so I thought you were in command. And the chief said, no, I thought you were in command because you were in the front. And they lost the 9 guys in the building. So that lack of establishing command or transferring command when you arrive, no one told the chief that came in on this call, no one told them, hey, this is Ladder 25. I've been IC since we got here. All good. I was here first. Great. There was no transfer between the two to say, I got 7 guys in the building, 2 guys on the roof, and 3 guys in the exposure, Bravo exposure. That didn't happen.
But
that's my point part that has to happen.
My point is, it didn't happen on the radio because the policy says what's happening. The chief should just know because the guys are going to do the job they've been assigned to do by the policy, not by command. Charleston didn't kill guys because the 2 chiefs were arguing about who was in command. That was a factor. They also killed guys by using booster lines in a couch store warehouse that they thought was an exterior fire that wasn't. And guys just freelancing the hell out of everything. It wasn't just because 2 guys were arguing on the radio about who was in command. I would guarantee you that if you go look at Boston's manual, it will say the first in engine company does this. The first in ladder does this. They're taking command out of it and they're just policying it. So when the chief arrives, the chief should just know, okay, engine 30's here first. Their hydrant guy's getting the thing. The driver's getting the water going. The officer and the pipe man are inside. Ladder 25 is here first. Their driver's on the roof because I see the stick up. Their crew's inside. He should just know that.
So Doug, I agree with you with the timelines being very tight. And the first in officer, he's going to be mobile command, right? Or command while mobile. So all of that is I think, like you said, it's just rote. It's what they do. They know that's what's going on, and I completely agree with that. And that's how those things are done. However, what got missed here, I think, was is that the incident commander was inside the building with the guys looking at smoke on the ceiling and fire at the ceiling. And then when it was no longer some light smoke and fire at the ceiling, he did not go back outside and assume an outside command where he could get a better picture of the whole thing. I don't think that happened. And that might have slowed down the recognition that this was a rapidly deteriorating situation. It might have been a factor. We can't say for sure because we weren't there. But
Are you
you
saying
got to know.
the incident commander being the District 10 chief or the latter officer?
I think the latter officer was the first. The District 10 chief
command.
was 2 or 3 minutes behind him.
Because like these metro fire departments, the company officers do not stay outside as command. If they're command because they're there first, they're going in and they're doing their company job. As they're not going to say, "Oh, it's smoke getting worse. I'm going to go outside and be command until the chief gets here." They are doing their company job, looking after their company till the chief gets here. That's the way it goes. They could say, "Okay, ladder 25, this is getting bad. Let's all leave." But it's different to us in the Canadian world. I think that's
where the shortcoming is. Yeah. That's what they're pointing out. Read number point, 3 because it addresses it.
That's my point about number 2. Okay.
Good point. I agree with you, Doug, but it's a fine line between knowing what's going on and doing your job.
I just think I'm going to go after Paul a little bit, but I don't know your history. I never worked with you, Denny, but Paul, I think, is very ICS and command driven, where there's lots of fire departments that are policy driven. They're not told what to do by command. They're told what to do by their SOP binder, and they just do it. And I think NIOSH isn't open to that much. They think a guy should be in command directing the whole time. But anyways. Number 3, fire department should develop, implement, and enforce a written standard operating procedure that identifies incident management training standards and requirements for members expected to serve in command roles. And if the discussion is NFPA 1561, the Standard on Emergency Services Incident Management System, Chapter 4.8.3 states, quote, "Responders who are expected to perform as an incident commander or to be assigned to supervisory levels within the command structure shall be trained in and familiar with incident management system and the particular levels at which they're expected to perform." NIOSH investigators reviewed the department's training requirements for firefighters and first-line supervisors. IMS was not included in any of the training requirements at any level within the fire department or at the fire department's academy.
They weren't trained for ICS or IMS. They never had the training.
That question makes me question, like, when you go to become a lieutenant or captain, what training do you get? What's the difference?
Exactly. So that's what they're trying to point out here.
That recommendation, as much as I kind of hate agreeing with them all, I agree with that one. If you're going from being a firefighter to a company officer, you need training in how to then be a supervisor. And not a supervisor about hurt feelings to the fire department. A supervisor at the firehouse. It's a supervisor about, like, I'm now in charge of a company on the scene. How do I do that? That's the important thing.
And you're in charge of maybe 2 or 3 companies until district chief arrives or something too. So exactly.
But if you are, that part of your mind has to be thinking the bigger picture.
Right.
And so you don't do as good a job supervising your crew because part of your mind is the whole incident, thinking about the roof crew and everything else. So, and also I must point out, this is a ladder officer who was first in. So not an engine company officer. So his focus is slightly different than what an engine company officer might be.
I would question that right, wrong, or indifferent, that the first in officer, which is command until someone else gets there, I would question that they have a whole lot to do or think about the other companies arriving, because I think it's left up to the policy dictates what you are supposed to do based on your rig type and arrival order. And me, as the first in ladder captain or officer, I have nothing to do with the second in engine company, even though
Yes, you're in charge of them.
No, you're not. He is
You
in
should
charge
be.
of him. He is in charge of him.
You're the first officer.
No.
You establish command.
Paul, the policy dictates what's happening. You're not commanding them. You're in charge of your company. You're not in charge of telling him to get the hydrant because the policy tells him to do that. The company officers worry about their own company jobs.
But if there's people hanging out the window, you may say, screw the hydrant, go get those people out of the building. Or if there's a hole in the basement and the people
in these
are
fire
in
departments, the trucks are determined who does search and rescue, who does whatever.
Agree.
And okay, in your example, that's when an audible gets called. In this fire, there was no audible called. It was a playbook run fire. There wasn't like, oh, this time there's somebody hanging out the window. We'll change what we're doing and go worry about that. That wasn't something to worry about.
I'm just saying it can't be all SOP driven. First of all, they didn't have them. Second of all, it can't be all SOP driven. You have to have somebody in command. In Alberta, it's law. It's law in Alberta here that the municipality must use ICS. The first principle of ICS is
Doug is right. Doug is right about how they ran this department.
Yeah.
And that's how lots of fire departments do it. And
still.
Unfortunately.
No, not unfortunately. It's not unfortunate. Paul, there's companies that do command that I tell you everything you do and how to tie your shoes that kill firefighters. That's not what happened here. These guys didn't die because the ladder company officer was inside the building and not outside the building.
They died because nobody was doing risk assessment. That's why they died.
And that's incident command's first thing is go, hang on, like the warehouse in Worcester, Mass. No one else is going to die today. You can't go in. Was that SOPs? No. The guy stood in front of the door and said, that's it. I'm not losing any more people.
Was that in the first 8 minutes of a fire?
No.
Exactly. This went quick. This went from I see fire, there's no smoke inside, let's go put the fire out because we're firefighters and that's what we do. And let's do a search while we're at it because we're firefighters and that's what we do. To, the fire's above us. Boom, roof fell on me, I'm dead now.
Because there was no command, there was no one to make
Paul,
that risk
the
assessment.
chief could have been the first guy on scene at this fire, never went inside, stood there with the radio in his hand, staring at the building, and they still wouldn't have went in, and they would have, the same thing would have happened.
Quite possibly.
Not if the ladder.
ICS is not, your little golden ICS blue card is not the fix-it of the whole fire service, Paul.
Good to have you back, Doug. Recommendation number 4. Fire department should ensure incident commander conducts initial size up and a risk assessment of the incident scene before beginning interior firefighting operations and continually evaluates the conditions to determine if operations should become defensive. Among the discussion among the most important duties of the first officer on the scene, whoever he is, I don't care what truck he came on, is conducting an initial size up of the incident. This information lays the foundation for the entire operation. It determines the number of firefighters and the amount of apparatus and equipment needs to control the blaze. Assists in determining the most effective point for fire extinguishment, attack for the most effective method of venting heat and smoke, and whether the attack should be offensive or defensive. Retired Fire Chief Alan Rudicini recommends that the IC drive partially or completely around the structure whenever possible to get a complete view. While this may delay the arrival by a few seconds, the drive-by may provide significant details that were not visible from the command post, which is often on the alpha side. Fires in commercial structures are typically more dangerous than residential building fires. Retired Assistant Chief Vince Dunn states that defensive operations should be used more often at special occupancy and commercial buildings. Chief Dunn cites the statistics that 4 firefighters die for every 100,000 residential fires compared to 9 firefighter deaths for every 100,000 commercial structure fires. And we saw that in that report we reviewed about a year ago. In this incident, a 360 was never conducted. There was no pre-planning information available on the construction features or any other potential hazards with the occupancy of the structure, smoke showing from the roof upon arrival, failure to conduct vertical ventilation, inability to hit the seat of the fire, rapid decrease in visibility coupled with a rapid rise in temperature were all indicators that could have prompted consideration of switching from offensive to defensive strategy. Could have, but the timeline was really short, like you said, and the communications were ineffective. There wasn't a lot of communication between the players.
Yeah. They misread the risk. I'm telling you, that's what it is. They didn't see it coming.
And they misread. I don't want to speak for Boston, but
Yeah.
No, we don't know.
But many Metro fire departments' first game plan is to go interior. They show up and we're there to put the fire out and search for people. Let's go in and do it. Where you need to be, the company officer needs to know, and everybody, not just him, when there's signs there, like you look at the ceiling and there's red lines on fire, that's when you got to go, oh, wait, hey, well, let's go, back out. And I mean, that's why this has nothing to do with the commander being outside. The people inside didn't recognize risk inside and signs inside that things were a problem and know to turn around and leave.
And I questioned whether they thought they had the authority to tell everybody to get out.
And something else on this recommendation, as you were talking, that I really, really disagree with NIOSH saying is when they say the incident commander should conduct an initial size up and risk assessment of the incident before beginning interior firefighting. Everybody should do an incident size up and risk analysis before you decide what you're going to do. Not you don't go, well, the chief's going to do it. I don't have to.
That's why we want everybody to listen to the podcast.
It's not,
You're exactly right, Doug.
It's not the incident commander's job.
Everybody's job.
It's every company officer, driver, and firefighter. Because the newest guy on it could be your first fire and you see the red lines burning that the captain didn't see, and that might be enough to get out. So that's why
But
I disagree with you all the time.
Also, Doug, some cities with block long buildings, doing a 360 is somewhat impractical. So they have other procedures. And in this case, unless I heard wrong, they put a guy on the roof, and the guy went to the backside and had a look at the back end of the building and noticed that the fire was coming through over the kitchen area.
And he saw fire from under the AC unit, which, like,
Right.
when you hear that kind of stuff, that's what you
Right.
should be saying.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't be under the AC unit that has fire between. You know what I mean? Like it.
What we don't know is whether it was communicated. Right? We don't know that.
Because Boston is a condensed city. Doing a 360 there could take you a day. Like there's buildings connected, and by the time you get to the true Delta side where there's not a building anymore, it doesn't matter because there's 25 addresses in between.
You're in Revere by then.
That's why you have to. That's why you put a guy on the roof that goes over and gives you a Charlie side report or whatever. And
we don't know whether that report happened. We really don't know. Anyway, recommendation 5, moving along with the popular recommendations. Fire departments should ensure that the incident commander establishes a stationary command post, maintains the role of director of fireground operations, does not become involved in firefighting efforts, and that transfer of command follows established procedures. So this is aimed at the first in officers, what that's aimed at. Discussions. According to this NFPA 1561 standard on incident management, the incident commander shall have overall authority for management of the incident. In addition, conducting of initial size up, the incident commander must establish and maintain a command post outside of the structure to assign companies and delegate functions, continually evaluating risk versus gain of the continued firefighting efforts. In this stationary command post was never established at this particular incident, and separate and uncoordinated activities were taking place in multiple locations. This contributed to a failure to size up the overall incident properly, evaluate risk versus gain, communicate and evaluate fireground operations, transfer command, and maintain accountability on the fireground. Doug. more of the same.
Well, yeah, I mean, the last 3-4 recommendations are basically all saying the same thing. So I've already
Yeah.
said my piece.
Yeah. And well, you said it well.
Yeah, good discussion. Like, it's a long episode, but it's a good talk.
I think the principles established here, though, are not wrong. And some of the incident command needs or things that you've got to do can be established through standard procedures. And you don't necessarily have to formally invent them or create them at each incident. Like Doug says, when you're the only officer on scene, you're everything. You're the safety guy. You're the incident commander. You're you're
and
everything.
and
So
e-
yeah, that's
even
true too. So
even if you don't establish command or want to be command, you are command. If too bad, like somebody's command, and if you're the first officer or last, like if you're the first guy there or you're the last guy because everybody else left, you're command. That's the way
yeah,
it
but
goes.
you got to do the functions, though, Doug. That's
Yeah.
that's the challenge, and it's hard to do two jobs at once. It really is.
Number 6, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it basically says that a procedure should be developed with strategies and tactics using structures known as taxpayers. Not everybody uses that term taxpayer. It's traditionally and it's not recognized by national building codes. It's a term used to describe commercial structure that's usually 1 or 2 stories in height and of ordinary or class 3 construction. In this incident, the single-story taxpayer had a cockloft, which is the base between the ceiling and the roof, but not like a full-size attic. That's what it just said.
Great place for a fire.
Tapered in height
Yeah.
from 30 inches to 17 inches with the roof sloping. There was a drop ceiling of combustible tiles, and I mean the point is if you walk into a single-story flat roof building that has a drop ceiling, pop a tile and make sure you're not walking past the fire. This reminds me, I was on Lacombe when this fire happened, and I remember going to an alarms call after this fire with a drop ceiling. You were driving the tower, and I said, Paul, I'm taking a pike pole. And I took one, and I checked the ceiling tile. And
Excellent. As soon as you get there, pop a ceiling tile. If it's a house or something like that, or there's a basement, open the closet, cut a little hole in the floor. See what you got underneath you, right? Before you go in too far.
You can start by using your tick. You don't need to cut a hole in anybody's floor.
Yes.
You can
yes.
start
like
by, popping a ceiling tile is easy to put the ceiling tile back.
That's easy. Yeah, yeah.
But if you don't, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Bruinsini's favorite people, might not care what fire truck shows up, but they're going to care if you start putting holes in their floor.
Yeah. So, the lesson here that they're talking about, knowing these particular types of buildings and being prepared to address incidents in them. I mean, I'm reading this 30 Fires You Must Know book, and in the year 2000, there was a fire in a McDonald's restaurant in Houston, Texas, and something very, very similar happened. 2 firefighters died, and they died because of a roof collapse, and the roof collapsed because of a hidden fire in the kitchen, in the ductwork. They attacked the lightweight wood structural members that held the roof up. So pretty much the same incident as happened here.
7 years later, same thing.
Well, this one here was 7 years before this incident.
Yeah.
The Houston incident. So it happened before this particular incident in Boston, but a very similar type scenario. And we've all seen these buildings, and they're called taxpayers because they're cheap and dirty and easy to put up. They pay the rent, they pay the taxes, and when anything happens to them, like Mrs. Smith drives her car right through the front of the building and takes out a major part of the building, or there's any kind of a serious fire or water infiltration, they just tear the darn thing down and rebuild it. So, they're low value buildings, and the only reason you'd want to save a building like this is because of exposures. Yeah. And or people inside. Otherwise, you are the exposure as a firefighter. So know your buildings. We said that before, Paul, I'm pretty sure.
Recommendation number 7 is one that I don't have a whole lot of negative to say about, that firefighters and officers should receive fundamental and annual training in according to firefighter 1001 or officer 1021 standards. And it's true. I mean, your firefighters should be trained to be firefighters. Your officers should be trained to be officers, and they should have ongoing training in such disciplines. That's pretty straightforward. It says prior to this incident, the department provided their own training and requirements to recruits and members. The basic training provided by the fire department at the time did not meet NFPA Firefighter 1 requirements, and the department did not have a process to verify minimum professional qualifications, which is pretty common in a big department. They do it their way.
But what I like is some departments that we know of in Ontario, like I teach ICS, which is all good, but verification of the ICS training and knowledge, because it's a perishable skill. Same as blue card. If you don't practice it, blue card, you have to renew it every 3 years. You got to do all the modules again and answer a test and work through it, right? Because it's a perishable skill. And so ICS is the same, and Ontario has initiated this program with K. Lamb and Associates, and I know there's some Alberta departments here that are doing it as well. It's quite common in Britain where they have their officers actually do scenarios using either iPads or virtual reality or whatever to test their ICS or IMS management skills at a scene, and that is a good way to verify those skills, like it says here in the recommendations.
Yeah, the police call that block training, which is basically where you're reestablishing your basic skills and learning new ones.
Why AEMA calls the IMT training block training? Because that's a police term. Oh, I didn't know that. There, I learned something. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
I thought you knew everything already.
I know.
Oh!
Ouch! Yikes.
Number eight, like Paul alluded to earlier before the episode started, about choose the right line for your fire. A big, and not just for your fire, but what your fire could potentially be. 1 3/4 lines, 1.5 lines are basically single family dwelling fire lines. If you're going to a commercial or a 3-story walk up or an industrial or a high rise or anything that's not a single family dwelling fire,
or a McMansion,
you should probably be taking a 2.5 line to start with. I'd rather
but
have
even if you
much water and then go, oh, we don't need this much, than go, we don't have enough. I'm burning now.
But if you got an 1 3/4 line, make sure it's equipped to flow water. Like I know ours were equipped with smooth bores, and they'd flow 800 liters a minute. And so 800 liters a minute is quite a lot of water. And but bring a gun to a gunfight, or how does it go? Something like that.
Like
bring a knife to a gunfight. That's it.
That recommendation, right? Taxpayers are difficult. Could have a cockcloth, medium fire load, heavy fire load. Vincent Dunn says the most important. Vinnie Dunn says the most important firefighting operation on a structure fire is stretching that first attack line. Properly positioned functional fire attack line saves the most lives during a fire, confines the fire to property damage. Searches will proceed quickly and rescues accomplished under less threat, etc. So in this, we had the uncharged 1 3/4. Would a 65 or in that or a big 1 3/4 might have held that fire back for a bit in the kitchen. It might have been enough, maybe.
I think,
and a backup line in the doorway.
And a backup
line.
Yeah, backup line.
I think with this fire being almost 20 years ago, also,
a lot has changed.
A lot has changed in the thinking too of using your reach of stream and not needing to find the fire before you spray the water. Like you can cool as you advance, all that kind of stuff. I think if this fire happened today, I don't know if this recommendation would be needed, because I think they might have just done that already, knowing
if the people are adopting, the nozzle forward, air and field stuff, learning this modern attack, which apparently I think IFSTA just changed their. I saw somebody posted a few weeks ago. They changed their chapter to say like flow and go is the way to go. Right, get some water in there. Cool it off. So that's good.
But this is an area where severe budget restrictions could affect you. Inability to upgrade your equipment to meet new requirements
and training.
There's no question. That budgets could have had an impact here.
Well, I know quite a few firefighters who go to nozzle forward on their own dime. just to learn that
Yep.
skill, to try to protect
Yep.
themselves, serve their community and stuff like that, which, kudos
Yeah.
to them. I
Yeah.
know
The
Doug
challenge
and
is
Dirk, you
getting.
guys came to Fort Saskatchewan and gave me an evening of
Yeah.
nozzle forward skills for my guys,
Yeah.
right? To learn those skills.
The challenge is going back to your fire department and getting the new ideas accepted. That's the
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah. Especially in an older or very traditional department.
Yeah, but
Recommendation
at least you can.
9.
At least you can get your shift on board.
Yeah. Fire departments ensure that staffed backup hose lines are utilized to protect the means of egress. So there's that backup line in the doorway for primary attack and search crews. Backup lines not used to fire attack in other areas for exposure control. They're deployed, charged, and on standby in the same general area to back up the attack line. In this incident, a 2.5-inch line was not pulled and directed into the exposure. As the fire conditions in the cock loft intensified, the hot layer of smoke began to extend down to the floor level. At this time, there was no way to control the fire spread and allow firefighters a safe egress path. If a backup line had been in place, it is possible that the buildup of fire could have been mitigated by penetrating through the suspended ceiling and cooling down the hot gas layer. Backup hose line could have maintained an egress for firefighters who were operating within that primary attack line, might have slowed the collapse too, right? Because the members would be
Yeah.
stopped from burning.
Yeah. I will tell you that those paper tiles, a strong stream on
Yeah,
solid bore,
knocks them down.
takes them right out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once they get soggy, it takes nothing to punch through them. Real
Number
easy.
10, fire departments should ensure firefighters immediately open ceilings. We talked about this. And concealed space whenever a fire is above them. Firefighters may have difficulty in finding the exact location of fire in a building, though heavy smoke makes it clear that fire is there. Fire heavy smoke from the roof suggests the fire could be in a concealed space of the roof system. Same with that auto parts store in Coos Bay, Oregon that killed a couple of guys, right? The fire was in the concealed areas of the roof. Factors of a large area with heavy fire loading can result in a rapid fire spread. The enclosure of the void space allows the hot gases to accumulate, which may flash when you get oxygen in there. When the fire is suspected to be above a ceiling, use a pipe pole, other tools, open the ceiling, check for extension. Any ceiling below a void should be pulled and examined by firefighters. So we know all that.
But it's clear that Boston knew that too. I mean, they had people specifically assigned positions to do that kind of stuff, to pull walls, to pull ceilings.
Some
Those
reason
positions
it
were
didn't
there.
happen.
It's right in the description of their jobs. Recommendation 11, fire departments should use thermal imaging cameras, TICs, during the initial size up and search phases. Again, a 2007 fire. Thermal imaging cameras can be useful tools for initial size up and for locating the seat of a fire. Infrared thermal cameras can assist firefighters in quickly getting critical information about the location of the source, in other words, the seat of the fire. If there's a lot of fire, you sometimes can't really get too much information on the exact point of origin, but you can generalize know where the most of the heat is, which can help plan an effective and rapid response. Where to put the water, in other words, where to open up the walls or the ceiling. A firefighter about to enter a room filled with smoke and flame can use the TIC to assist in judging whether or not it'll be safe from falling beams, walls, or other dangers. Maybe so. The use of a TIC may provide additional information for the incident commanders, but again, you got to have a communications pathway there to make that work. Anyway, the use of a TIC during initial size up and entry into the structure might have confirmed the extent of hot gases and smokes in the concealed space above the ceiling or the seat of the fire, possibly the best area for an attack. I don't think they really had issues finding where the fire was at this.
You could see it, yeah.
It was the extent of the fire that they didn't seem
they
to
didn't know
perceive adequately. Yeah,
I
I know guys saying 2007, no TICs. There were.
I think they
Oh, yeah.
they could see the fire in the kitchen, but not in the ceiling, where a TIC
didn't
scan
perceive
might
it
have-
above them. Yeah.
Yep.
Recommendation 12, departments should ensure firefighters understand the influence of ventilation on fire behavior and coordinate with interior fire suppressions. Ventilation is a systematic removal and replacement of heated air, smoke, and gases from inside the structure with cooler air. It's critical we understand the influence of ventilation on behavior and the fire environment. Increasingly, a ventilation-controlled fire will result in increased heat release rate that may result in extreme fire behavior, such as a ventilation-induced flashover or backdraft. However, Effective tactical ventilation, closely coordinated with fire attack, can significantly reduce the potential for extreme fire behavior and increased tenability of the space. In this incident, vertical ventilation was never completed. The initial attack team and the initial IC were inside the structure fighting the fire in the cockloft area that was open in the kitchen. The fire conditions worsened in the dining room as thick black smoke began to bank down onto the floor. Horizontal ventilation was performed on the front windows, which flanked the point of egress for the crews working inside. This provided oxygen to the fire and led to a rapid fire event. Venting can be a very effective life safety procedure. When venting for life safety purposes, the principle is to pull the fire heat and smoke and toxic gases away from victims' stairs and other egress route. A vent opening made between the firefighter or victims and their path of egress could be fatal if the fire is pulled to their location or cuts off the path of egress. And fire will go to the vent. If you open the front windows, the fire is going for that air, especially if it's trapped in the cockloft.
Just to remind you that they did attempt to vent the roof. They went up there with a power saw, and
Yeah,
the
and it got
saw
stuck.
stalled. Right. So
Yep.
it's probably, and also in the descriptor, they said that there were multiple roofs on this building, where there were older roofs on top of, with newer roofs on
Yes.
top of older roofs, and having experience of trying to cut ventilation holes in roofs like that, it's difficult. Rotary saws don't do well with that because of all the amount of tar that's in there. You're better with a proper chainsaw
Chainsaw.
designed
Yep.
for that. Yeah, if I had those buildings in my jurisdiction, I would put both a rotary saw and a chainsaw on the roof. One failed, you had the other. I remember trying to ventilate a building where it had like 6 inches of tar and gravel built up on it, and all we were getting was streams of molten tar coming off the back of the saw, and we had a great deal of difficulty getting through the roof to a hidden fire that the roofers had very conveniently set for us. So yeah, it can be difficult. And they also tried at this time to get the cover off the copula, which was a little ventilation tower in the roof, and they were unable to do that too. So the guy up there, one guy, didn't have the tools, didn't have the manpower to get that job effectively done. So I'd say they were very short in that regard.
Which we talked about budget already before. Yep. The next recommendation, I don't know, Doug, if you just want to summarize, we've talked about it, except that they didn't transmit the conditions to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, number 13 says they should train firefighters to communicate interior and exterior conditions to the incident commander and provide regular updates. The first arriving officer reported to the dispatcher that there was fire and smoke showing from the roof. The smoke in the dining room was negligible when the initial attack team made entry, but they had fire overhead in the kitchen. During the interviews, firefighters and officers who operated inside and firefighters who worked on the roof reported signs of deteriorating conditions. However, no interior condition reports were ever broadcast over the radio, nor were there any condition reports or progress requests regarding vertical ventilation to or from the chief officers or firefighters during the incident. So, like we said, command can't always do a 360. They might send a roof guy to do a backside report, whatever. But it's all good to send the guy. You need to get the report back. You need to tell them what you're seeing and if conditions are getting worse inside, you have to say so, and the people need to know. They can't all see what's going on.
Yeah. In fact, the first line that was stretched inside was stretched dry. The officer was inside, walked all the way back out to the engine to tell the MPO to charge the line. That wasn't even done by radio. So he had to walk out and then walk back in again. So, there was something going on there with the radios, as in not going on. Not sure why. Recommendation 14. Fire departments should ensure that crew integrity is maintained during fire suppression operations. Man, we've had this one many times. Firefighters should always work and remain in teams whenever they are operating in a hazardous environment. There were numerous instances where firefighters and officers were working independently and entering and exiting the structure alone. Doug had already pointed out earlier, though, that they had like 3 crews in this kitchen, which was a reasonable sized kitchen, but pretty crowded, right? So it's not hard to mix people up. That's for sure.
So fire department should ensure that rapid intervention crew is established and available to immediately respond to emergency rescue incidents. Of course, rapid intervention teams should be designated and available to respond before attack operations begin at all fireground operations, or at least soon after, I would say. We've often talked about the BC rule within 10 minutes or before you send the second crew in. This department's procedures designated the fourth due engine as RIT. However, the fourth due engine, Rescue 2, wasn't prepared to engage as RIT until several minutes after the rapid fire event occurred. And it was a quick event. I mean, this happened fast, right?
And I think Boston has acted on this recommendation, because I know when they have a working fire now, they have a engine and a ladder and a chief all automatically assigned as a RIT group.
Excellent. That's great. The recommendation 16, fire departments should ensure that firefighters wear a full array of turnout clothing for personal protective equipment that is certified by NFPA and appropriate for the assigned task while participating in fire suppression and overhaul activities. At the time of the incident, the fire department was following a special order which did not require their members to wear the complete protective ensemble as required in SOPs and NFPA 1971. Fire departments members could choose from three options: bunker coat, bunker pants, bunker boots. Bunker coat, station pants, safety boots, like station boots. Bunker coat, station pants, and a 3/4 length boot. This special order was implemented by the fire department to assist in the health and safety of members with regard to physical stress caused by heat and limited range of motion. The fire department also did not require their members to wear flash hoods. Both victims were wearing the number two option: bunker coat, station pants, and safety boots at the time of the fire. Bunker gear is reported by the manufacturer to meet the requirements of NFPA 1971, although it was not certified to meet NFPA. So this was during the time when Boston was really against Nomex or fire non-propagating material. And they were wearing wool. They were wearing Bristol, UK firefighting gear. And this was a big thing between the union and the city. And they fought that they didn't need the NFPA certified gear. And I didn't know that they didn't even have to wear it. But yeah, and then eventually that kind of went away because they, after I don't know what certain point, they started pushing the 1971 certified gear.
You can't help believe that might have been a factor here. If you're caught in a rollover, it wasn't really a flashover, I don't think, but if you're caught in a rollover, there's an intense amount of heat that comes at you. You got to be thinking that your legs and calves and everything else is going to be probably in severe pain, and you're going to overheat very quickly. And if your legs and so forth are impaired, how are you walking out of there? How are you crawling out of there?
Can't move. Yeah.
And the guys are saying that the floor was very hot when they tried to crawl in. Well, if you're crawling in a pair of station pants and you're crawling on top of burning material that fell from the ceiling, that's got to impair your ability to get in there. So yeah, it's got to have been a factor, way more than they talk about.
Yeah, I'm not a proponent of not wearing bunker gear, but I know there is a thought out there that bunker gear encapsulates you too much and allows you to get deeper into the fire because you don't feel the heat. So I would bet there was a little bit of like macho attitude of, we don't wear bunker gear because we're tough Boston firefighters, or we're tough whoever firefighter. Like Chicago was a long time too before they wore bunker gear, and they let people choose. And I guess part of the thing was like, if you want to make that choice yourself, it's up to you. Just like there's places you don't have to wear a helmet riding a motorcycle. If you want to make that choice, that's up to you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's many big departments anymore that would allow this.
No, I don't think there's any, really. I think they've all changed over now.
Yeah.
But I do believe that the lesson is still pertinent today. How many videos do I see on social media? And it's generally volunteer services where the guys are rolling up in their street clothes and doing things that I would never consider doing in my street clothes. I'd take the moment to get my bunkers on. I see guys operating hand lines with their fully bunkered up. They're operating hand lines in the front door, the front windows. I can count the hairs on the back of the knuckles on their hand, so I know they're not wearing gloves. So there's all of those aspects. I see guys walking around with their masks hanging down around their knees, doing jobs, dragging it through all the shit and the dirt. And there's ways around that. And I'm thinking to myself, man, which part of protecting yourself don't you get? So yeah, it's too bad that I think this was a factor.
The next two recommendations really more about code setting and requirement that alarm systems are in commercial structures, especially void spaces, because to improve life safety, and also that it was discovered. I mentioned to this at the start that it was determined there were multiple violations regarding the installation materials and maintenance used in the exhaust system for the kitchen. Some of the materials and installation discrepancies include improper ductwork materials, improper adequate ductwork connections, penetrations in the ductwork, inadequate clearance to combustibles, lack of access for cleaning and inspection, and absence of ductwork enclosures. It was all connected with just sheet metal screws that had corroded and had provided large openings for grease from the cooking operations to exit into the cockloft area. So this was unfortunately going to happen. These places do exist, and it's again, if you got no money, you got no money for inspectors either. So this happens, and unfortunately, we need to know our hood. Hopefully, and like Doug says, when you're on another call, check it out. Look at the building. Look at the condition, so that That's why you have to go to commercial alarms even during the daytime, right, Doug? So that we know we can't do like the UK is doing, so that we get familiar with the area. Which it's a valid point.
But the condition of the grease laden exhaust system, difficult to judge that from the fryer.
You wouldn't see it.
You gotta open it all up and get into it. Look for the label. The label ain't there. Expect it to be uselessly poorly built. Basically.
Yeah.
If the card is not,
in Canada, the rules are like it's got to be cleaned
every
twice
6
a
months.
year. It's got to be serviced and stuff. Those
That's
are
right.
the rules here, but that might not be the same in other jurisdictions.
Clearly not.
Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Emergency Traffic Podcast. Please tell a friend. My last words are, of course, now let's be safe out there. We always give a moment to Doug and Denis to do a little sign off.
See you at the big one.
Learn from these episodes. There's so many lessons here. Take care every day. Thanks, everybody.